Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on The Real Story. I'm Emma Wulfhorst. We are in election crunch time now. It came up really quickly. Plenty of people nationwide have already cast their ballots for this upcoming election. That's thanks to absentee, but also in-person early voting. Georgia started Tuesday of this past week and set a new record. More than 300,000 voters across the state came out for the first day at the polling locations. That's 123% higher than the last time they opened the polls. People are turning out far before November 5th, which is Election Day. Even former President Jimmy Carter got in on the early voting this past week. After turning 100, he cast his absentee ballot while on hospice in Georgia. If you're ready to cast your vote or thinking, when will I find the time? Here in Connecticut, in-person early voting starts in every town tomorrow. So let's go ahead and break down further what you need to know.
This year, there is another way to vote.
In 2022, voters passed an amendment changing the state constitution to become the 47th state to adopt early voting.
Although it's not a new concept, it's certainly new to Connecticut.
We wanted to give families the opportunity to balance their work and family and professional commitments.
For the general election, voters will have 14 days of early in-person voting from Monday, October 21st through Sunday, November 3rd. This includes 2 full weekends.
We're doing everything we can to make it easier and more convenient for you to be able to vote. I want people to have the confidence, though, they can vote and vote on their schedule.
Every town will have at least one early voting location, but the secretary says it won't be at your typical polling place. So check your town or the state's website to find your location. Another thing to check, your voter registration status. If you need to re-register or sign up for the first time, you have until Friday, October 18th to do so online or by mail. If not, you can still register in person at your polling location.
After you vote, instead of just putting your ballot into the tabulator machine, you'll put it inside an envelope and you'll seal it and sign it and place that in the secure receptacle. And none of those votes will be counted until Election Day.
Election officials also want voters to know they can have confidence in the security of Connecticut's elections.
Connecticut, of course, has always had a paper trail in the form of a paper ballot. We run our elections at the municipal level, not the county level. In some jurisdictions, people are transporting ballots to a central county location. But here in Connecticut, we're doing all of that counting, recounts, and so on in the local municipality.
As always, you can find our complete voter guide with the links to the state website and a full breakdown of what's going to be on your ballot online at fox61.com. But I want to dig deeper into our state's process, especially with 2 extra weeks of in-person poll stations and a ballot question to further expand absentee voting to anyone, all in an effort to get people engaged in electing leaders, whether a presidential race or a town government one. Because the more people who cast their votes, the better this project of democracy works. We spoke directly with a person at the heart of it all right now, Deputy Registrar in the town of Darien, Corey Frate. We checked in with him mid-preparations for the polls to open tomorrow and started by asking about just how many voters, even the smallest of Connecticut towns, are ready for during a high-engagement election and with an influx of registrations.
Darien is a small town, but we have a high number of registered voters. Since I headed out of the office today, we have over 15,500 voters in town. And that number has grown significantly since the start of the year. Since January, our voter rolls have grown about 3.5%, a little over 3.5%. And compared to this time last year and compared to the last couple of months, we have had an enormous spike in registration. This month alone, we've seen a 428% increase in registrations. Last month, we had a 315% increase, and August saw over 225% increase. If voter turnout continues to hold in Darien, we can expect anywhere from 13 to 14,000 voters come out to the polls. If about 1,200 of those, 1,500 of those are absentee ballots, we might hope for at least another 1,500 coming to early voting. I think that our early voting schedule is in line with a lot of other states of varying different sizes. One difference is that many of those states will do early voting by county rather than by individual town. Here in Connecticut, all 169 municipalities, it is their responsibility. It's the registrar's offices that have to conduct voting. It is their respective town clerks who are responsible for absentee ballots. And so that is kind of a large deal of work. And, it's frantic at the office. We have people coming in around the clock. We are extending our hours unofficially because we just happen to be there working late.
As Corey is someone who deals directly with election security, from poll audits to accessibility, and works with the town's ballots and counting process, we asked him to answer some of your questions and walk us through how this all is handled.
We endeavor to make sure that every poll site, whether it's the early voting poll site, the same-day registration sites, both in early voting and election day, and each district in town is staffed by a bipartisan group of poll workers. If there's ever, an issue at the end, we do have provisional ballots available. These are ballots that, for whatever reason, if a voter doesn't appear to be eligible, isn't on the roster for that poll site, but it's 7:59, it's 8:03. They'll have the chance to fill out a ballot and put it in a sealed envelope. That way, at the end of the night, we can check the registration and check to see if this is in fact an eligible voter to be cast. So we want to make sure that voters have the chance to cast a ballot. The poll site will close up. The moderators and assistant registrars that are at each poll site will begin closing shop. They'll go over to secure the tabulator machine that every voter is putting their ballots through. They will end the election on that and start printing the tapes. These tapes have all the results on them. And so they post them up publicly. These tapes are very accurate counts of each ballot that is put through the machine. We test our machines rigorously in the weeks leading up to the election. We have spare machines in case something breaks during the day, but all of that has a paper trail. After each election, our poll sites are audited. There's a random lottery, and variant gets called almost every single election for this audit by virtue of having a large number of poll sites for a town of our size. So we can verify after each election that our machines counted the total numbers that we had. We have those ballots accounted for.
From his office's perspective and many others we've spoken to, there's a real engagement this election, possibly enough to even set records, despite record distrust and dissatisfaction on a national level, whether that's from who's on the ballot to perceived security of those ballots being counted.
Every 2 years, voters have the chance to entirely repaint what our government looks like, to radically change the composition of our legislative chambers, of our office holders and representatives, and your ballot is your paintbrush. You have that chance every 2 years to make that change, to envision the government that you want working for you, and then to see it through. Your candidate's not always going to win, but if you vote every year, it won't be for lack of trying. Regardless of the political climate, we want to make sure that every voter in Connecticut knows that they have the access and the ability to cast their legally, allowed, permitted vote. If you're a registered voter in Connecticut, you deserve the chance to have that say. And now, following 45 or 46 other states, this year every voter has the chance to cast their vote early. Election day is no longer the only day you can vote. It is the final day you can vote.
That's right. Early in-person voting for 14 days starts tomorrow. And of course, options for absentee ballots and good old voting on election day. Don't go anywhere, though, because up next we have a special exclusive segment of The Real Story moving past Indigenous Peoples Day. We traveled to local tribes here in Connecticut to talk about the year-round battle they face against erasure, from prejudice to political pushback and much more. Stay with us for interviews you'll only see and hear about on Connecticut's news station.